Hello. My name is Bex Canner, and my pronouns are they, them, or he, him. And I'm here to talk to you about being a trans person, an autistic person, or being an autistic person who is exploring your gender or is just not sure or just wants to learn. And we're going to talk about self care, which is the theme of this whole um, camp. So I just first want to start off by introducing my sidekick, Jaime, who's an emotional support weighted dinosaur. Highly recommend. Jaime came from some department store or something, but he's great. Anyway, so that's my self care for the moment. Why do we need to talk about this? So, first of all, there is a huge crossover between gender diverse people and neurodiverse people. People who are trans, non binary, people who don't identify with the sex they were assigned at birth are more likely to be autistic, and autistic people are more likely to be gender diverse, not associated or identifying with the sex they were assigned at birth. So it's really important to talk about overlap, intersectional um, issues with between these two groups. Just by way of a little bit more introduction, I'm autistic and I am trans man, and I came to both identities a little bit later in life, in my mid to late 40s. So I've been learning. I'm 56 now, and I've been learning a lot over the last few years about how to take care of myself in both of these spaces. So I want to talk about some of the intersection. There's some similar stressors that we face. Obviously, number one is discrimination um, from all aspects of society. Lack of access in terms of like healthcare access is a big one. I find a lot of similarities in trying to educate providers, um, and just trying to access spaces that are accessible, both in terms of my gender identity, and my autism, and people knowing how to talk to me, people knowing or being open to knowing terminology and so forth. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because I want to get to the self care part. So, the biggest thing right now in the current climate is, for me anyway, is constant assaults to my nervous system from news, from political situation, from legislation, from just the anxiety associated with being trans and how that affects me as an autistic person. Um, and also, we can't deny that there are physical and emotional changes related to hormone replacement therapy that can be more accentuated for people with autism. And just the way our brains are um, unmasking creates changes in how we might be able to express our gender. The way my brain works, and the way things have turned out as I've started to learn how to unmask have made me much more aware of my needs, but also things in my body that are really difficult, such as things like facial hair. Like, I can't shave my facial hair because the feeling of stubble is intolerable. So if I want a different look or anything like that, I have to consider how that's going to affect me um, neurologically. And there's a lot of other examples, but I want to, like I said, get to the fun stuff. Um, so there's a lot of legislation right now and a lot of rhetoric, basically attacking trans people and other people who are disabled, people of color, black people, autistic people, immigrants. That's a huge one, especially in my family, I have a spouse and stepdaughter who are in the United States on green cards. Um, I'm a dual citizen of New Zealand, but they're New Zealand citizens. But my spouse is trans and has documents that don't match, and it's really frightening. And in fact, the two of us are planning to move back to New Zealand soon, um, for our safety. But not everybody has that privilege or option. But my autistic mind, can take us to really dark places. I can really imagine like an ICE detention facility, or, or worse. And that creates a lot of stress for my nervous system, as does just hearing news, doom scrolling, um, and my sensitivity and fear for the safety of my trans siblings, my trans community. Um, and not, like I said, not everybody has the option to leave the country, or leave the state if your state has outlawed gender affirming care. And then we have somebody who's in charge of healthcare in this country, basically talking about making a database and essentially rounding up autistic people. It's very sinister, and that kind of thing is probably just. I probably should have given a trigger warning here, and I apologize um, if that's creating the kind of distress that I'm talking about already. So, the more importantly, how do we manage the stress? So, as I was thinking about this and how I manage the stress, the thing that rose to the top was basically learning to say no and set limits and boundaries, on my time, on my news consumption, on my media consumption, and on the constant, what feels like constant asks for my money, for my time, for other people's views on how I should active uh, be an activist in this situation. How should I show up to help um, improve the situation for other trans people and other people in general? And often that includes making phone calls to legislators, and going to rallies, both of which are pretty much a hard no for me in terms of my nervous system and what I can handle. Um, Phone calls are really, really difficult. And I was living in Montana, where our legislators were incredibly hostile to my point of view and my plight, um, and I just didn't have it in me without an incredible amount of distress and energy that I didn't really want to give or have to give, to this cause. And going to rallies, similar, they're crowded, they're noisy. And so I needed to figure out what I can do and what things are reasonable for me to try to make things better. And for me, that usually means one to one community connection, interaction, helping people on a one to one basis or in a small group know that they're not alone and they have support. And then that ripples out and we remain visible, um, and doing things like this, so that other people can know you're not alone and it's okay to say no to things that you can't do, and manage your guilt. So it's hard to do that. I've had to really practice things, ways to let go. Just to put it out there, I'm a member of a couple of 12-step recovery groups, and they're often really good places to learn skills, and practice letting go of things, um, and being kind to ourselves. I think sometimes, at least in my head, I do some role plays, like how am I going to say no to people? How am I going to address a situation if somebody says, "Oh, you know, One of my coworkers said, "You need to download this app that tells you, 5 phone calls a day," and a lot of times I say no to myself, and then I'm just like, "Okay, thank you for that," and then I just do what's best for me. Or I could explain, no, phone calls are not an option for me. Um, but maybe I can do something else. Maybe I can write an email. Um, and don't make excuses. No is a complete sentence. Don't apologize. If you feel like you want to educate people, say, I'm autistic. That is something my nervous system can't handle. That is something that is not within the amount of energy I have in a day. But sometimes it takes too much energy to say that too. So just say no. Um, but practice. Practice makes perfect, and don't beat yourself up. Find community is another really important thing. Sometimes, if you live in an isolated place, online communities of trans people and neurodiverse trans people, they do exist. I found a couple, and I'll see if Carol Jean can put this in the notes. One is called TACT, TACT, and I looked it up, and they do have it's a lot of resources for trans people, but they have online support groups for neurodiverse trans folks as well. And then Translash, TRANSLASH, also has resources for autistic trans people. And then if you are a member of a 12-step recovery program, there are a lot of meetings that you can find online. Um, there are now, after the pandemic, all sorts of online meetings for people with all sorts of different identities that you can search up. And then finding in-person community, if you can, is, I think, really helpful. Some of us tend to isolate, stay in our homes, and um, I think that can be it can be comfortable, but maybe be a vicious cycle for making us turn inward and become more anxious and more depressed and fearful about what's going on. Um, so I mentioned thinking of things, finding things you can do to help others, to help
Max, I'm
situations.
sorry to interrupt you.
Uh huh.
Your paper is hitting the microphone on your computer,
Oh dear.
and
Okay.
it's really loud.
Oh shoot. Okay. Do we have to go back somewhere,
Um,
or is that
I can clean it up a little bit. You can just go from here, but just move your paper
okay?
where
Yeah.
it's not brushing the computer. It's okay if you even show it in the film, it's fine.
Okay. I've been sort of moving it over to the computer so I don't have to turn my head, but
Yeah,
um,
it's
okay.
okay.
I'm sorry.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. Um, all right. Where was I? So some of the things I find I can do to manage my need to help others in this time is to repost social media posts that are encouraging, that are supportive, that help people to know they're not alone. Um, I have some T-shirts. I have one that says "Protect Trans Kids." I have some other ones that are supportive, and people will say, "I like that T-shirt," and I can tell that they're really encouraged by knowing that they're not alone. I think that's a really big thing. And I'm talking about self care, but sometimes for me, self care means that I am able to bring my experience to my community and know that I'm helping. Um, so small but important ways to show that we're not alone and we're not being erased. Another one is bumper stickers. If you do that, if you have a car and you like to stick things on it, um, and like I said, small groups, having coffee with somebody, just even telling your story to someone who is neurotypical, who's not disabled, who is not trans. Sometimes, if that's a safe person, that can really be helpful and feel affirming, and um, yeah, help possibly spread community. Place limits on your news media consumption. Follow positive voices. I also follow some comedy channels on Instagram because I just love watching stand-up comedy. Sometimes it addresses politics, and sometimes it's just funny. I follow a podcast called Handsome, which is three queer people who just have some banter, and it is so funny and makes me laugh. And laughter is also a really good thing to calm our nervous systems and to calm down, um, to really reduce anxiety, reduces blood pressure. I think it stimulates oxytocin, feel good hormones. Um, and I also have to put limits on who I talk to. Um, there are some family members that I have to really put limits on spending time with. Other people, again, be able to say no. Um, and celebrate your transness in ways that feels good. And this goes into my biggest piece of advice, I guess, or my biggest the thing that I want to communicate the most, which is to cultivate joy. Find things that give you joy. You can celebrate yourself in private. You can try on clothes that make you feel happy. Um, you know, clothes with patterns or fabrics that make you feel good, that are soothing, that help you explore your gender, anything like that. And then if you have the ability and the confidence, you can try wearing those things in public. Things that give you comfort, like Jaime, my partner and I are really good at co-regulating each other. Just hugs and walks together, holding hands, those kinds of things are really soothing and really joyful. Out in nature, the other day we went to the ocean. I'm in Baltimore right now, not in Montana, and just had a great time. Um, and play, balance with things that are quiet or peaceful. I love going to libraries, reading books, bookstores, walking around with my headphones on and enjoying the quiet, or music, and sometimes even loud, quite, um, I don't know, angry, or or just loud music can sometimes actually soothe me. Um, Mindfulness, it's kind of a cliche, but just observing how you're feeling. And that helps me when I can observe what I'm feeling in my body. Um, and even if I don't know what it is, I can think, oh, something's going on, and how can I maybe put up some boundaries or do something that's going to soothe me in this moment. And if I'm not sure, I just have a few things like cuddling my emotional support dinosaur or going out for a walk. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's helping at first, but I just tell myself, I know this is going to help, and if it doesn't help, at least it's not harming me. um, because harming ourselves is not really self-care. I mean, sometimes it can feel good in the moment, um, but I don't think I would include it in self-care. Creativity, art, music, dancing, just cooking. Cooking is one for me. Just, you know, taking time to do those things. For me, a lot of these things, I have a list in my head. Sometimes I have a list written down of things, and it's so hard to get started to do them. So be easy on yourself, but at the same time, really try to notice when you need some self care. And these are things that don't apply just to trans people, but like I said, the overlap is really important to recognize. Um, and finding the balance. This does apply specifically, well, more in some cases to trans people and people in marginalized communities, because, as I said, being visible can be helpful to feel like you're doing something for the community, but it can affect your safety. It can cause a lot of anxiety. So for our personal well-being, sometimes we need to reduce that stress on our nervous systems and reduce the fear of violence and discrimination or re-traumatization. And because for me, anything that increases my risk of a meltdown or just shut down, anything like that, can be re-traumatizing, and vicious cycle. And I also am aware, specifically as a trans person, that I don't want people to see me as kind of crazy, I guess. I don't like to use that term, but it is something out there that I'm aware that, stereotypes about us. I just want to live my life and not die, not be harmed, and be visible and show people that we're just, people like anyone else. Um, but the visibility is important politically, but also for helping us to celebrate who we are and being authentic humans, I think, is one of the most important ways that I can take care of myself, to be real and to also really be aware of who safe people are. So if I can put my toe in the little pond of authenticity, and people receive me with care and support, then I know that I have another ally. Um, and it's interesting, this whole issue of coming out, which is often something that queer people and LGBTQ people are very aware of. I'm also aware that sometimes coming out as autistic is not that easy, because people have a lot of stereotypes. So there's kind of a double whammy, I suppose, in terms of how we relate to other people, how we find people who are safe, um, comfortable, people who can be allies and supportive. And I have, because of the overlap, I mean, I do have communities of people who have, you know, are in both, camp, or in the intersection. Um, but when I come out to some people as trans, I'm not necessarily comfortable as coming out as autistic, and vice versa. So it is a matter of like just being careful. Um, and again, I want to emphasize the boundaries, and limits, and knowing what is good for me, knowing what is going to give me joy, what is going to, but is going to be safe, but also knowing how far I can step out of that comfort zone in order to achieve what I want to achieve, which is support for others, community, not being invisible, being able to perhaps affect change for others. And even though I am leaving the country, I think that especially with the internet and online communities, I can continue to do that. So I don't feel that I'm just running away. I'm just trying to keep my family safe at this time, and safe in a way that I doesn't activate my anxiety and my fear, and then cause me to basically shut down and be totally ineffective in all spheres of my life. Um, so that those are the main things that I have thought of. I'm sure there are many others. There'll be things that I think of after I finish this talk that I'll be like, oh shoot, I wish I'd thought of that. But hopefully this gives you some ideas and a springboard for other things. And I would encourage you to journal about them, write them down, think about them, think about what you can and can't do. Think about how you can support yourself and care for yourself in these really outrageous, kind of unprecedented times, I suppose. Um, I mean, homophobia and transphobia are not unprecedented. Neither is ableism, but the way they're being, thrust upon us these days is pretty dire in a way. And having said that, I want to end with: we are amazing and strong and resilient people. We deserve to show up and be seen. We deserve to treat ourselves kindly and take care of ourselves regardless of what other people think we should be doing. Um, and that is the most important thing. Don't let other people tell you what you should do. Don't let other people guilt you into going to a rally or making a phone call or doing something in activism that isn't something that is good for you. Find ways to be clear on what you can and can't do. Um, and once you've identified things, do those things in a way that brings you joy. And if we are visible and joyful, we show people that we are, well, we are here and we live our lives with joy. We're not just hiding away and um, being sad and depressed. And it's okay to be sad and depressed, and if that is where you are, but then to try to break out of that. And that's what this talk and this whole camp is about. Um, and even being out and presence is an act of resistance, and is vital to our well-being and survival in the long run. That's what's going to help us to stay here. And so stay alive, but don't hide. Um, thanks for listening. Um, Jaime says thank you for listening as well. And keep it up. You're great.